Okay, I've got about 30 minutes here, and I wanted to. I've been looking over this document called The Jewish Domination of Weimar Germany, 1919 to 1932. And I mean, a lot of us know in our circle, what the Weimar Republic was. Um, the inflation and I call it I say we live in the modern day Weimar Republic, because, and it's even worse because, it's all online through, all the free pornography out there. And that's basically what the Weimar was. But, so I wanted to go through this, the Jewish domination of the Weimar Republic, and it's 34 pages, but I'm just going to scroll through it and just kind of hit some things that stand out to me. But the first, you got the very first page. You got these five Jews. Arthur Sulzberger Jr. of the New York Times, Ian Boesky, the inside trader, Michael Eisner, who's the highest paid executive in America, and Robert Maxwell, the robber of pension funds, and I believe that's Ghislaine Maxwell, dad. I believe so. I'm not quite sure, but I think it is, because it says in here his real name was Jean Ludwig Huck, and I believe, I'm pretty sure that's him. But if you're listening to this and I'm wrong, let me know. So it's got these five kikes on the first page. But it says the failure of the 1905 Bolshevik Revolution in Russia resulted in tens of thousands of Jews fleeing to Germany, as they were the chief architects of the first attempt to overthrow the Tsar. With Germany in depression and the value of the mark wiped out, the Jews were able to buy businesses often at less than 1% of their true value. With a loaf of bread costing 100,000 marks, the Jews obtained loans from Jewish banks and bought up industry, newspapers, vast blocks of apartment buildings, all for pennies on the dollar. So I mean, they're just coming in there and, doing Jew things, being the nuisance that they are. They control a lot of the money. They got big dollars. And, that's kind of how it was. But so we got the development of the legal position of the Jews in Russia. It says on the same scale as that on which the ideas of the French Revolution of 1789 won the day in Europe, and thus caused the breakdown of the last barriers of a feudal caste system. And the principle of freedom and equality in the eyes of the law was also applied to the Jews in Prussia. The edict on the 11th of March, 1812, granted full rights of citizenship to Jews in Prussia of the day. It is true that they were subsequently deprived of certain rights, such as holding academical teaching, scholastic posts, and and also offices in the communes, which during World War II, and to build up a lot of support. That's what the commies did. That's what Stalin did. They got all these anti-Semitic support groups, to really gain more, to help gain ally support and whatnot. And then as soon as the war was over, boom, he started doing the exact same thing. They couldn't go to universities there. They were limited to the big wins. They couldn't hold any spot in government. They couldn't have any position in government. Nothing. So I mean, this kind of stuff's nothing new. They got a lot of limited citizenship rights and all that wherever they are, depending on what country they're in. But it says here, but these reservations were also withdrawn later, and by the order of the Council of the King of Prussia, dated July 3rd, 1869, they were expressly granted, with the removal of all restrictions, the legal rights enabling them to be members of the communal and the state representative bodies and to exercise public office. So basically, yeah. This expression of the royal will represented the complete emancipation of the Jews. From that day on, the Jew in Prussia was a citizen with the same full rights as any other German citizen. All profession, all trades, and all public offices were open to him. He was placed in a position of absolute parity and granted absolute tolerance. We shall see how Jewry repaid the German people for the most considerate treatment. Yeah, so they limited him, and then by the end of the day, wow, represented with complete emancipation of the Jews. That's incredible, but not surprising. So, this next bit, the numerical development of Jewry in Prussia. The first complete inventory of the people in the form of the census was undertaken by Prussian government in the year 1816 after the Wars of Liberation. It's got a chart with the census. The population in the state of Prussia was 10,349,031, and 1.2% of that were Jews. And so that's another thing too. It's like you talk about the Russian Revolution, and you hear people say, "Well, they weren't all Jews," and that's kind of the beauty of it. Like if they were all Jews, then that it would be too obvious. So there's always a very small percentage of them, and they just spread all the freaking toxic garbage that they do, and they just become a nuisance. They've been a nuisance since the beginning of time, regardless of the country, regardless of who's in control of that country. It's the same thing over and over again. They're the definition of a nuisance. Yeah, it says here. Thus, even the insufficient statistics demonstrating the case. Well, here, in spite of these sources of error, okay, so I guess they're saying there's an error somewhere. It's got a table here, and it's from the census of the year 1816 all the way to 1925. The percentage of the percentage each year looks like the lowest one is 11.9%, and 10.5% in 1925, and it looks like the highest percentage per 1,000 in total population of Prussia. Looks like 13.6% in 1855. So it says, if this table is examined, it will be seen that it shows at first a steadily rising curve which continues until 1880 and then suddenly drops. So that from that point on, the impression is given of a decrease in the population of Jews in the population, but this impression is deceptive. In fact, it conceals the real state of affairs, which is directly the opposite. This distorted representation of statistics is connected in the first place to the fact that the fertility of the Jewish population, and consequently the increase in numbers decreases rapidly in proportion to the total population. It is further connected with the fact that the statistical method only deals with the idea of professing Jews and not with that of the Jews by race. Owing to this mechanical factor alone, the statistics fail from the start to take account of all the Jews who are Jews by race without belonging to the Mosaic faith. Okay, gotcha that, yeah. We can provide an idea of the effect of this factor by pointing out that in the decade from 1922 to 1923, for which statistics are available, the number of Jews who resigned their membership of the church in Berlin alone amounts to 5,611. So it says, in concluding part of the table shows that between the years 1910 and 1925, there was a gain and increase in the Jewish population from 10.4 to 10.9 per 1,000. This fact is all the more remarkable as it must not be forgotten in the connection that between the census of years 1910 and 1925, the cession of extremely Jewish areas such as Posen in West Prussia occurred, whereby no less than 49.1 or 11 or 49,101 or 11.81% of the Jewish population were taken from the Prussia state. Thus, even the insufficient statistics demonstrate in this case the fact that in spite of changes of religion and resignation of church membership as well as losses of population owing to cessions of territory since the World War, a wave of increase in the Jewish population has swept across Germany. Yeah, they were flooding it. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were flooding it. Just, yeah. The reasons for this are obvious, even to the layman. They are due to an extraordinary powerful wave of Jewish immigration, principally from the east of Europe, which occurred during and after the war. For after all, Germany has always been most exposed to the influx of Jews from the east. Geographically, Germany is the first dam in the stream of Jewish immigration. So the geographical distribution of the Jews in Prussia. Let's see, how many Jewish judges were there in Prussia? Out of 5,800 official judges, 430 or 7.5% were of Jewish origin. These prominent positions were occupied by 12 presidents of state and appellate courts and 109 assessors in supreme state courts and director of state courts. And the figures of the local increase are, however, even more informative. Thus, with the provincial statistics are particularly striking in the case of Berlin, Brandenburg, Lower Silesia, and Schleswig-Holstein, with a general increase of 7.8%, 6.7%, 4.7%, and 4.5%. And the total population is to be compared with an increase in the Jewish population of 19.9%, 14.9%, 12.4%, and 25.4%. The corresponding figures are even higher in the case of the individual large cities, and some of which was of Magdeburg, Oberhausen, and Breslau. The number of Jews has doubled and even trebled as compared. It says trebled, means tripled as compared with the total population. And here we go. But the most interesting figures are those for the city of Berlin. For the German capital occupies by far the first place, not only owing to its absolute numerical preponderance of 172,672, but also as regards its proportionate relationship to the entire population. Berlin alone is the home of more than 4/10 of the entire Jewish population of Prussia, while the entire population of Berlin only amounts to 1/10 of the entire population of the state. No clearer expression could be found of the influx of Jewry into the towns and large cities. The German capital, above all, like a giant magnet, has affected almost 1/2 of the Jews in Prussia. The same result is obtained if we arrange the provinces according to their share in the entire number of the Jews in the state of Prussia. Yep. So you got the city of Berlin. We got 172,672. That's absolute. Total Jewish, 427.4. The provincial population is 42.9. And you go down to the very last one, 14. Hohenzollern, that's how you pronounce it. I butcher all these names and places. The absolute number is 335. Total Jewish is 9.8. The provisional population is 4.7. I'm going to link this PDF because I know I'm just kind of rambling a little bit. Jewish dislike of connection with the soil. 728 out of 1,000 Jews live in large cities. 292 out of 1,000 Germans live in large cities. This is in 1925. Yeah, this city sucked. I hate cities. I'm near one right now, and there's freaking beggars at every traffic light holding up their damn homeless, begging for money. Bunch of beggars. Every time I see him, I think of Vlad the Impaler and what he thought of beggars and what he did to them. I'd do the same thing. I can't stand beggars. Vlad the Impaler was a badass. But that's another one, people are like, oh, he impaled people, he was awful. He was, whatever. He was a boss. He was an absolute boss. Let's see, the increase in the percentage of Jews and other inhabitants from 1910 to 1925. Holy cow. Yeah. In Magdeburg, the increase in percentage in Jews, 32.1%. Of other inhabitants there, 5.1. In Altona, Hamburg, the increase for the Jews was 25.4%. For all others, 7.5%. In Berlin, 19.9%. And other inhabitants in Berlin, 7.8. In Breslau, 15.5. And for all the others, 8.2. Yep, that's how they swarm into the great cities. The development of Jewry since the last pre-war census on the 1st of December 1910. You got every fifth Jew is an alien. So out of the 404,000 Jews domiciled in Prussia in 1925, 76,000 were aliens. Hamburg, they had 367,000. And so I see what it's saying here. So Hamburg, Berlin, Frankfurt, and I can't read what that one is. Colt, maybe, however you say it. In 1910, 367,000. You got 75,000 more that are coming on. All right, here we go. The vocations practiced by them. The vocational employment of the entire population, as well as of Germans, foreign, and all Jews in Prussia, according to the economic divisions. So we got agriculture, gardening, and stock rearing, forestry, and fishing. Let's see. Exercising vocation, independent without profession, 3,324 Jews, which is 1.74%. The largest group for the agriculture industry, the entire population, for that industry was 5,593,144, which was just under 29.5%. Industry in handicraft, including mining and building the trade, the entire population exercising vocation, independent without profession, 7,771,799. That's the entire population. And the Jews made up 49,308, which is 25.8%. Commerce and business, including the hotel and restaurant businesses. The entire population, 3,248, 3,248,145, which is 17%. And the Jews were at 59%, with just over 112,000. Public administration, law officials, army, navy, church, religious service, legal practices, and independent professions. You had entire population, 921,000, just over 921,000. And Jews were at 11,324, which was just shy of 6%. Health and hygienic vocations, including welfare work, the entire population, 356,416, which was just under 2%. And the Jews were at 8,297%, which was 4.3%. And that is, out of the other groups, that is second to German Jews. So what I've been doing is I've been seeing, man, I'm just kind of waking up. So the entire population is obviously the entire population for all the different, for all the people, Jews and non-Jews. And then, and then the other ones, you've got the German Jews, the foreign Jews, and all Jews. So what I've been doing is I've just been giving you all Jews. So we got domestic service and occupation without regular position or without details of the business engaged. 1,901,435, and all Jews they were at 6,338, which was just a little over 3.3%. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. All right, so where did the Jews live? Vocations exercised in 1925 by the Jews and the Prussian population, respectively, in percentage. Agriculture and forestry, 29.5% of the total population. 1.7% were the Jews. Industry and handicraft, 40.9% of the total population. And the Jews made up 25.9% of that. Trade and commerce, Jews, the total population is 17.1%, and the Jews made up 59% of that. So it's kind of interesting to see where the number spikes a little bit. Trade and commerce. Yeah, that charts for the distribution of the Jews and to the most important groups of the national economy. And here we go. We got the attitude of the Jews towards work. So this chart, out of 100 Jews exercising vocations, 47.5 are independent. 33.8 are salaried employees. 9.2 are workmen. 9.5 are family members assisting in the undertaking. So out of 100 Jews exercising vocations, 47.5 are independent, 33.8 are salaried, 9.2 are workmen, 9.5 are family members assisting in the undertaking. Let's see. Let's go on to the next chart here. We got Jews and non-Jews. The independent total is 47.5 for the Jews and 15.1% for non-Jews. Owners and leases, 45% Jew, 14.4 non-Jew. Leading officials, 2.6% were Jews and 0.7 were non-Jews. I'm not going over all this one right here. This chart right here is kind of funky to read, but I'll share the PDF in the link. Jewry in the German capital. So the acme of the whole of this development of the population is, however, first reached in the German capital, Berlin. It is here in the metropolis of the Reich, the focus of the business and cultural life of the whole country. The Jews have established their headquarters, We have already seen that no less than 42% of the entire Jewish population of Prussia have settled in Berlin, owing to the attraction of the great city, which is inherent to Jewry. But this concentration of Jewry in the capital, which is in itself already unhealthy, is eclipsed by far. The statistics resulting from an examination of the internal structure of Jewry in the capital. From these, it appears that in the year 1925, according to the vocational census, the percentage of Jews in the most important vocations in Berlin was as follows. Jewish doctors, 48%, dentists, 37.5%, chemists, 32%, lawyers, 50%, artists, 7.5%, editors, 8.5%, theatrical producers and managers, 14.2%, and actors, 12.3%. So 48% were freaking doctors. These figures alone speak volumes, but these impressive statistics themselves, when further examined, cast a glaring light on the material and intellectual predominance of Jewry in the German capital. They show that the position of the Jews in the spheres of health and law is absolutely dominant, for they dominate each sphere purely, quantitatively to 50%. Indeed, in the preference for and obtaining of individual positions in this sphere, there is evidence of regular policy for obtaining the most influential and even more the most profitable posts. Properties of Jewish children in the higher schools of Berlin. So in Berlin Mitte, I guess, the percentage of Jews is 17.6%. Tiergarten, 14.9%. Wedding, 2.6%. Prasloberg, 10.7%. Yeah, we're going to scroll down. I'm going to skip in Lichtenberg, 1.4. Reichendorf, 1.8. So the total number of children in Berlin at the time was 66,820. The total number of Jewish children were 7,748, which made up 11.6%. I bet all those children were, how they like to say, they were born to a Jewish father. They were born to a Jewish mother. I'm sure that's what all these kids were too. That's how they try to give them their pass and make it seem like, oh, well, they're not Jewish. Well, yeah, they are. They're ethnic Jews. So, how many Jewish lawyers were there in Berlin? Of 3,400 lawyers total, 1,850 or 54% were of Jewish origin. We're going to go, let's see, this is going to be the last one I do. The influence of Jewry on mind and morals. So Berlin's intellectual vocations are dominated by the Jews. Let's see, proportion of Jews among medical men, 48%. School doctors, that's, get those pervs in the schools as the school doctors, 43%. School doctors is 43%. Welfare doctors, this is going 68%. Hospital directors, 45%. Dentists, 38%. Chemists, 32%. Lawyers, 54%. Theater managers, 80%. Head doctors, 44%. I could have made a joke there, but I'll stop. Teachers in the medical faculty, 50%. Teachers in the philosophical faculty, 25%. So you've got 80% as theater managers putting on their queer plays. And welfare doctors, 68%. Welfare doctors. I'm going to be honest, this is the first time I've heard of a welfare doctor. But hey, leave it to them. There's a big picture of Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, that queer pervert who basically, was able to do his thing in disguise of a doctor. He'd go off and he would just basically fulfill all his wants and needs, and uh, but he was under disguise. He was under disguise as a doctor. He was a sex. He was a sex genius. The Einstein of sex is what they called him. He was a freaking. He was a perv. He was a queer perv. What was the composition of the Anwaltskammer, the supreme representative body of the lawyers in Berlin? Of 33 members, 22 or 66% were of Jewish origin. How many were members of the general directorate were Jews? Of the 4 members, all 4 or 100% were of Jewish origin. How many? That's how many members of the general directorate were Jews. And then there's goes on. That's about half the. There are 34 pages. That's 8. But we've gone through 18 of them. Just kind of skimmed through them. But that's all I'm gonna do right now. I'll probably go back to this later on tonight and be a little more thorough with it. I kind of half-assed this, but whatever. I'll attach the link to this document because I like how it gets inside and gives you the statistical point of view, along with, there is a lot of information. I'm just not reading it right now. So, despite the fact that I'm half asleep and I half-assed this, I hope maybe you enjoyed it. So.